There is this sense of disarray spreading.
Well, we have building tension with China over Taiwan. The war in Ukraine rages on, with the offensive not having gone as well as many had hoped for. And now all of a sudden we've got a major war in Israel on a scale that we haven't seen in decades. And I think this is a sign that we are headed into the post-Cold War era. There is a diffusing distribution of power in the world. The digital age is turning everything upside down. And so I think we really are seeing the beginning of what is probably going to be a turbulent moment in international politics that could last quite some time.
Chad, how does this translate into companies who, may have had leaders who rose to power on the idea of globalism, on being large multinationals, or certainly having, broad operations across the globe? Does that change now?
I think it doesn't, but it does highlight the need for risk management. And I think we just went through the pandemic. A lot of the clients at the Chertoff Group, we've helped them map out their supply chains to make those more resilient. And I think, as Charles just said, the world's certainly not becoming a safer place. And a lot of the infrastructure and capabilities that were put in place to deal with the disruption of the pandemic are now being utilized to look at what can be happening on the cascading effects from the Middle East.
And talk a little bit more about that. That's interesting.
Yeah. So right now, if you look at sort of the three primary things, most of our clients, we've helped them to, if they had personnel in a region, they've looked to exfiltrate them. Unfortunately, there's some that are still stranded there, and we're working to help them get out. The second is assets. If you step back and look at business continuity, in the same way the pandemic disrupted operations, right now, there are folks that have supply chains, like you said, global companies that cross that region, and you have to look at the implications around oil and the disruption there. And lastly, with respect to cyber, which knows no boundaries, is obviously an area where the Iranians have demonstrated repeatedly that they will use that as a tool, and that is something that has impacted U.S. corporations and others globally. And the final point we just touched on was supply chain, where I do think there's an increasing ability of all major corporations to look at resiliency in their supply chain, and having mapped that out, they're now refreshed. The responsible actors are prudently refreshing that.
One more, I mean, do you see a change? I see that you think Israel is going to be a potentially difficult place for companies to put further investment right now. Have you seen that also with Ukraine? We've seen all the companies who've had to pull out of Russia. Obviously, there's major questions about what to do about China at this point. How would you describe the nature and direction of American investment dollars in 2023 versus maybe 2013?
Well, we at the Chertoff Group invest as well as consult in security, and the two world leaders in that space are the United States and Israel. And prior to this, I think there was a feeling, because of the strong Israeli security domestic efforts coupled with the Iron Dome, that there was a perception of relative security. And unfortunately, the events that have happened in the last few days have destroyed that perception. And I think it's going to take many years for that to be restored. In the short term, what you're going to see is there's a tremendous amount of innovation and capability that's in Israel that I think many of us will help support, and will, in some cases, help them to find a home here in the United States until that settles down. So be on the lookout there. And then overall, for your viewers, I do think the overall defense sector is someplace where you'll see a lot of safe haven investments going towards. We've already seen in the last few days, the defense and aerospace ETF is up to the tune of about 6%, or almost $30 billion.
Right. Charles, what would you add to that? I mean, is there anything we're missing where, things suddenly settle back down into the end of history once again?
Well, I don't think we're going to see that anytime soon. My guess is that the situation is going to get bumpier in Israel. Obviously, we're now focused very much on Israel-Gaza, but the border with Syria and Lebanon is a dangerous place. A lot of Iranian-backed Hezbollah fighters. We don't know whether the West Bank will remain calm. We don't know whether we may see the return of fighting between Israeli Jews and Israeli Arabs. I think at the broader global level, we're still in a scenario in which the main word that comes to mind is de-risking, right? We're trying to redirect our supply chains. We're telling the Chinese we're not going to let them get access to high-end semiconductors. We've unplugged Russia from the Western economy, and they've rejiggered their own trade routes and their economy is doing okay. I think the $6 million question is this geopolitical tension that we see going to build